This is the fourth and final part of Animals, which may have inspired the overall designs of the monsters arriving within Monster Hunter Rise. Today, we'll be taking a look at the Almadron as well as the flagship, the Magnamalo. Hey everyone, Pinoy X here once again, back with another Monster Hunter video, and this is the fourth and final part of Animals and Creatures which may have inspired the overall designs of the monsters arriving within Monster Hunter Rise. We have seen some amazing monsters arriving with this title and have managed to compare them to real-life animals to better understand the potential inspiration behind their designs and give us a better understanding how these creatures in the game can feel realistic by comparing them to real-life animals. If you haven't seen all the previous parts of this miniseries as of yet, I've gone ahead and put a link in the description below so you can go ahead and check them out all for yourself. Now in this one, we're going to take a look at the two final monsters that have been introduced so far within Rise before the release of the title, which are the Almudron as well as the flagship of this game known as the Magnamalo. First up, let's go ahead and take a look at the Almadron, one of the new Leviathans arriving within Monster Hunter Rise. The Almadron is one of the new Leviathans arriving within Monster Hunter Rise, and the best way for me to describe this monster is that this is the polar opposite of the Mizutsune. When we take a look at the characteristics of the Almadron, first up, let's talk about the inspiration behind the monster based on mythology. The general body structure of Almadron takes heavy inspiration from your traditional Chinese dragon design. However, the capabilities of this monster based around mud is actually focused on the yokai known as the Dorotabo. Dorotabo are usually portrayed as vengeful spirits that have taken a humanoid form that is covered in mud. That is the reason why when we were introduced to Almadron, you notice that the monster is completely covered in mud based around its muddy abilities. So overall, these are the main inspiration behind the monster's design based on the characteristics of certain mythological creatures. With the understanding that the Almadron's physical characteristics are based around a Chinese dragon, the first thing I decided to do is try to match the facial structure of the monster to different kinds of mammals, because usually Chinese dragons are portrayed to have mammal faces, and rightly enough, I was able to match the Almadron's face to the likes of big cats. Now we're not just taking a look at any kind of big cat here, we're gonna take a look at the Black Panther here, and this is to match the color of the beast to that of the monster that we're looking into. When we take a look at the monster's concept art right here and compare it to this creature right here growling side by side, you'll start to notice a lot of similarities between the Black Panther's characteristics as well as that of the Almadron, just based around this one particular expression. So you're really starting to see a match between a big cat's face to that of the Almadron. So more than likely, this is one of the main inspiration behind the monster's overall design, a big cat's facial structure. Now of course, with the big cat design for the monster's face, they also added in the whiskers of a catfish in order to really complete the Chinese dragon look for the monster, because most traditional Chinese dragon designs, they usually have the whiskers of a catfish on them. Now moving towards the neck of the monster, this is where we start to see the more reptilian-like characteristics of the Almadron really kick in. The neck of the monster is partially inspired by the likes of a cobra, and that is because when we take a look at the hood on the monster's neck, which are created by the ridges going down towards its body, this is extremely similar to what we see with a cobra, especially when we take away the details of the monster and just focus on the silhouette of the Almadron. Comparing the silhouette of the Almadron to that of a cobra, you really start to see the cobra-like characteristics on this monster's neck. So one of the key characteristics of this monster is partially inspired by a cobra. As we go towards the body of the monster, this is where we start to see large reptiles become a heavy influence on the Almadron's design. Now we're taking a look at animals such as the likes of alligators, crocodiles, and caimans, and in this case, we're going to use the black caiman as the potential inspiration behind the monster's design. Now the reason I'm choosing the black caiman is for two reasons. The first one is the entire length of both the monster and the black caiman. Their bodies only make up half their entire length. The tail makes up the other half. This is a characteristic they both share, although with the Almadron being a monster in Rise, it does make the monster far larger in comparison to what we see with the black caiman. Alongside this, both of these creatures have a two-tone coloration to them, highlighted by a third coloration. In the case of the black caiman, it's a black coloration on its scales, highlighted by a white color. However, sometimes on the younger species of black caiman, you also see a bit of yellow. This is actually something that we see with the Almadron. When you take a look at the Almadron, the monster has black scales all over its body, highlighted by a reddish pink coloration. After that, you see some yellow highlights on the monster, which are actually the liquid that Almadron uses in order to generate mud. So these are the main characteristics we're comparing the monster to when we take a look at the anatomy of the Almadron and comparing it to a real-life reptile. Another piece of Almadron anatomy that we can compare to the likes of the Black Caiman here is going to be the ridges that run across the monster's back. Now in the case of the Almadron, the exaggeration of the ridges start at the back of the monster. However, on real-life caimans, the exaggeration of these ridges actually go towards the tail of the creature. This is because the ridges actually help the caiman to swim better, hence the reason why their tails have these exaggerated ridges, and alongside this they can weaponize their tails if needed. So overall, similar to the Mizutsune, the Almadron is a mixture between mammal and reptile in order to create a unique leviathan in terms of its anatomy and general appearance. Now just as a final note, the monster's tail is actually inspired by a paintbrush because the monster's ability is to brush mud towards hunters in order to incapacitate them. So overall, these are the main characteristics that we can see with the Almadron coming up within Monster Hunter Rise. And now, let's go ahead and take a look at the flagship of Monster Hunter Rise, that is the Magnamalo. Now the Magnamalo's main inspiration based on Japanese mythology is what is known as an onibi. Now onibi are not considered as yokai, they're actually considered as a form of spirit that can take on different kinds of characteristics based on the properties of the spirit. You can have something along the lines of a fire spirit, a water spirit, a shadow spirit, or in the case of Magnamalo, we have the Spirit of Malice. Now when we take a look at the characteristics of Magnamalo based on its physical appearance, you'll notice that there's a lot of characteristics based on armor, more specifically a samurai armor. This is because the idea here is that the Onibi has possessed the armor of a dead samurai, thus creating the Wyvern of Malice. So that's the main inspiration behind the Magnamalo's design based on Japanese mythology. So now that we understand the mythological inspiration behind the Magnamalo, what about the real-life animal? Well, this is the only monster that I've had the easiest time of comparing to a real-life animal, and that is because Capcom only used one creature in order to create the motif of the monster. From their IGN interview all the way to their questionnaire with Gaijin Hunter, Capcom has confirmed that the only creature that they've used in order to create the Magnamalo is some form of tiger. Now in this case, we're gonna go ahead and assume that they've taken the largest tiger in existence, which is the Siberian tiger, hence the bulk of the Magnamalo. Now when we take a look at the characteristics of a modern day Siberian tiger and compare it to Magnamalo, you'll start to see a lot of similar characteristics. Again, this is because Capcom only used a tiger in order to create this monster. Now the stripes of a tiger are randomized, however with Magnamalo they actually follow a set pattern. The stripes of Magnamalo go all the way down towards the tip of its tail, and you'll notice that with every single body part of the monster they always follow a set pattern. That is one of the key differences between the real life animal and the monster that we're about to fight within Monster Hunter Rise. Now alongside this, the other big difference is that when you take a look at the Magnamalo, it looks like the monster is wearing armor. The idea here is that they've taken the anatomy of a tiger and they've infused it with the armor of a samurai. That is the reason why the tail of the monster is that of a spear, because that is the weapon of a samurai, whereas the forelegs, the head, and the body, they're all wearing suits of armor that has been utilized by a samurai. So these are all the characteristics of the Magnamalo that we can compare it to when taking a look at real-life inspirations. We're not just taking a look at an animal anymore, we also have to take a look at objects. Now, along with real-life tigers, we also have the inspiration of prehistoric creatures for the Magnamalo, in this case a saber-toothed tiger. When the Magnamalo becomes enraged, a number of retractable blades begin to extend. These include the retractable fangs of the monster. It extends fully, giving it a very similar look to that of the Barioth. Now with this in mind, it does mean that the Magnamalo has also taken partial inspiration from the likes of a saber-toothed tiger, because if we take a look at the fangs of the monster and compare it to a saber-toothed tiger's fangs, they pretty much match at this point. However, the main difference here is that the Magnamalo does not have these fangs out all the time. It only uses them when the monster becomes enraged or when the monster is consuming food. So these are all the creatures that we can see so far that really inspired the Magnamalo's overall design and infusing them with the samurai equipment in order to create the unique flagship coming up within Monster Hunter Rise. And these are the final two monsters we're currently looking into, not including the mysterious creature floating in the skies of Kamura that was introduced in one of the latest trailers. Hopefully you have enjoyed this miniseries where we take a look at the monsters introduced within Monster Hunter Rise and comparing them to real-life animals and creatures to better understand their overall inspiration in terms of design, as well as how Capcom can portray these monsters as something more realistic based on their inspiration. And with that being said, what do you think about the Almadron as well as the Magnamalo, the two monsters arriving within Monster Hunter Rise? Let us know in the comments below your thoughts and opinions regarding these two final monsters that we have observed that are arriving within the next upcoming title. Now with all of that being said, if you enjoyed these videos, please consider leaving a like on the video itself and subscribing to the channel as well as hitting that bell icon so you can go ahead and catch up on any future Monster Hunter content that I might be doing or any other games that I might be playing in future. Until then, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks ever so much for watching, and I'll see you next time on the full release of Monster Hunter Rise. Onward and upward.